Tomorrow night, the Bryan College Station Chamber of Commerce is hosting a night of fun to celebrate the founding of the Twin Cities. We'll preview that for you. And the future of the controversial voting bill remains unknown, with Democratic lawmakers still out of the state. We take a closer look straight ahead. Your Krhd News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley, this is KRHD News.
Good evening, and thank you for bringing us into your homes. I'm Hallie Jones. With Texas Democrats lawmakers out of the state, a controversial voting bill still sits in limbo. Our Dennis Turner takes a deeper look into why some Texans support House Bill 3, while some strongly oppose.
Days after Texans celebrated American independence, their lawmakers started feeling the heat as they returned to the Capitol to take care of unfinished business. Ken and Rhonda Weaver came here to see it all unfold.
Do you think election fraud is a problem?
No.
House Democrats agreed with them and saw the Republicans' strong push on a voting bill as an attack.
This is where the hard work goes on, where all the negotiation happens. And this last session, it didn't go so well, because when push came to shove, Democrats walked out of the House chamber.
This time they walked out of the Capitol and hopped a plane to Washington, D.C., out of the legislative leaders and the governor's reach.
There is nothing special about this special session. This is a suppression session. This is a session to suppress our voting rights.
While many believe we need to address issues raised in the last election, even by people besides Donald Trump, Democrats say on this issue, they fear going back in time.
We have fought too long and too hard in this country to get away from having to count beans in a bag, having to count bubbles in a soap.
What does she mean? For years, folks of color had to pass a test before poll workers would allow them to vote. The test usually involves something impossible. Augusta Thomas watched it happen to her father.
They would ask him how many beans is in that jar, and he'd give a number. He didn't have no idea. Whether the number was right or wrong, we never knew. And they said, "We're sorry, you can't vote."
These Texas Democrats charge further tightening of mail-in ballot laws and abolishing 24-hour and drive-through voting denies opportunity, just like poll tests.
We're not free when people can be criminalized like Krhd Rogers for simple mistakes.
The Attorney General says Krhd Rogers, convicted of a felony as a teenager, did not have the right to vote on Super Tuesday.
When it comes to issues, you don't get much more partisan than voting. Democrats want more open voting. Republicans want more uniform rules across the state.
Some say Republicans did make some concessions in House Bill 3, but only the ones they wanted to make without input from Democrats.
Anyone who suggests this deprives anybody the right to vote is just simply flat out wrong. This provides more hours to vote than ever before allowed under law in the state of Texas.
And as for voter fraud, Governor Abbott quoted a federal judge, an appointee of President Barack Obama.
She wrote that voter fraud occurs, quote, in abundance with regard to ballot harvesting and mail-in ballots in the state of Texas. That is an Obama-appointed federal judge saying that.
Even so, some say with so much scrutiny in the last election, there's nothing to fix.
Yeah. It was one of the safest elections, supposedly, handled by IT guys that were handled by Trump. How can it be broken?
This rift between Republicans and Democrats, experts say, will get worse before or if it gets better. At the Texas State Capitol, Dennis Turner, 25 News.
The Twin Cities are celebrating a big night tomorrow night. KRHD News reporter Rachel Espaillat explains why the timing is just right as the community continues to rebound from the pandemic.
Just like most restaurants in the country, Third on Main in Bryan is experiencing a labor and supply shortage. The Bryan College Station Chamber of Commerce's 7th annual Founders Night gives a chance for businesses to network and navigate through lingering struggles from the pandemic. The indoor-outdoor event won't be all business. KRHD News is one of the proud sponsors of this casino-themed night, which is meant to celebrate local businesses and accomplishments.
It's events like this that we miss, that we kind of cherish, and I think everybody's kind of ready to get back out and do them again.
The event is open to the public. Tickets go for $50 and can be bought in advance or at the door. In Bryan, Rachel Espaillat, KRHD News.
And remember, the festivities kick off tomorrow night at 7 and will last until 10. The event will happen at the Stella Hotel. Events will take place both outside and inside. Networking, casino games, and local food favorites will all be available. Tickets are $50 and are available for purchase at bcschamber.org. An anonymous tip to Houston Crime Stoppers is credited to the arrest of a man charged with murdering the 24-year-old mother of his child, Layla Steele. 27-year-old Zacchaeus Gaston is in jail tonight, charged with 1 count of murder and 1 count of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Witnesses reported seeing Gaston shoot both Steele and their 1-year-old son before fleeing the scene. Gaston was out on 7 felony bonds and had an ankle monitor. The 1-year-old who was shot was transported to a hospital. Family has set up a GoFundMe page to help for any expenses. On the national level, Congress is proposing many changes, but one thing that isn't being discussed much is gun violence. Tonight, our Joe St. George takes you inside the debate on gun laws.
It's hard to even describe in words, right?
For Carla Byrne, coming here is tough. It's one of the more emotional reminders of what happened in Odessa, Texas, nearly 2 years ago.
We were literally in a war zone in our own town.
A gunman drove around town randomly shooting and killing people on the streets. Her brother Joey, one of the 7 killed, 25 were injured.
Every time I see this bench.
A bench here lists the names of the lives lost. Carla's brother was driving when the gunman encountered him.
His wife and his 2 children were in the car with him. They're sitting at a stoplight and they actually rolled up next to the USPS van. Of course, not knowing that the monster was sitting in the van.
Carla's story, while heartbreaking, is becoming less and less of an anomaly. There have been more than 1,800 people injured or killed in mass shootings so far in 2021. That's according to the nonprofit research group Gun Violence Archive. That's a higher toll than in 2015 or 2018. Carla knows all these shootings are difficult to remember, and there's a chance you may have forgotten about the mass shooting that changed her life. That sad fact is why she's so perplexed, why so little has changed with gun laws nationwide.
I know it's painful and frustrating.
Even President Biden has acknowledged how limited his actions on guns have been since taking office. And while the White House supports efforts in the U.S. Senate to vote on background checks and gun sales in the coming days, congressional aides tell us those votes will likely fail if they take place at all. Bipartisan negotiations have broken down, and Democrats can't make changes on their own. In Texas, not only is background check reforms not passed at the state level, a new law allows anyone living there to carry handguns without a license or training starting in September. Carla says that's the exact opposite of what politicians promised her after her brother's death.
It's names on a bench. That's all it is. Names on a bench. It means nothing to them. And when it means nothing except a name on a bench, then this is what we see happen.
So why aren't gun laws changing nationwide? Well, for one, Democrats don't have the votes here on Capitol Hill. They need at least 10 Republicans in the United States Senate to join the 50 Democrats to pass anything consequential. And when you speak to Second Amendment lobbying groups, you quickly realize they're just as passionate about this subject as Carla.
The point is, when a bad guy wants to do damage, all the laws in the world aren't going to stop it.
Meet David Ahmad with Open Carry Texas, a group that has vowed to campaign against any politician, Democrat or Republican, who advocates for any form of gun control. He believes Americans have actually embraced more guns to protect themselves in recent months, not less. On average, the FBI processes 8.6 million gun background checks annually. Last year in 2020, they processed 12.8 million background checks. He doesn't believe making it harder to own a gun or restricting what guns can be bought is constitutional.
Defending yourself and having the equipment that you need to do that is the only form of common sense that's ever going to make a damn bit of difference. Let me ask you a question. How many times has the existence of a law prevented a crime? The answer is none.
As you can see, David's passion rivals Carla's, and that's what makes this issue so polarizing, and why not much is expected to change anytime soon. I'm Joe St. George reporting.
Nearly 70% of unvaccinated adults in the United States have heard some sort of misinformation about the COVID vaccine. It's according to a survey from the Kaiser Family Foundation. 36% think COVID vaccines will cause COVID, which research has proven otherwise. Now, all of this has led the Surgeon General's first advisory under the Biden administration, declaring COVID-19 misinformation an urgent threat to public health. It calls on Americans to do their part in fighting misinformation.
We've said throughout this pandemic that misinformation is actually a national biosecurity threat. And it's really heartening to see the Surgeon General take that biosecurity threat seriously. I mean, on tobacco packets, we have warning labels saying tobacco kills. What the Surgeon General is saying is that on social media platforms, you need to be aware that misinformation on those platforms kills as well.
Now, Imran Ahmed leads the Center for Countering Digital Hate. It's a group that's been tracking COVID misinformation online since the pandemic began. The group has linked super spreaders of misinformation in the U.S. to 12 people, just 12, who have made several social media accounts. And at last check, only 30 of 89 accounts have been taken down.
But as of yet, the social media platforms haven't done enough. And the reason why is that legislators haven't given themselves the power to actually hold social media companies accountable to their own terms and conditions, their own community standards, which state that misinformation about health that may lead to loss of life should be removed. And their failure to do so is really, at this point, unforgivable.
Ahmed says that social media labels that warn people to check COVID facts really haven't done much. Although more work still needs to be done, he hopes the new advisory will help improve efforts in fighting COVID-19. A new trend is catching on with the lack of affordable housing and rising rent prices. Next in our lineup, how some cities are now prioritizing housing over parking. With surges happening now with the Delta variant, health officials are making a new push to get vaccinations to people who are experiencing homelessness. Numbers show a much higher death rate for that community over the general population. But those officials say there are hurdles in their mission that put a spotlight on existing inequities. Forrest Sanders shares with us the work being done to make inroads with this community.
If they want to find me, I am here. I'm down here from 9 in the morning till about 5:30 at night.
Always at the same cross street.
This is his spot.
Always listening to music pouring from car windows as they drive by.
Play some Ted Nugent or something.
The gig for newspaper man Paul Arndt is keeping people up to date, keeping them informed.
Hey, what's up?
See you, buddy.
Yep.
Paul, he's a good man.
You see, Paul sells for The Contributor,
32,
a street paper in Nashville, Tennessee.
47. You're a good guy. I don't care what everybody says about you. I don't either.
Vendors who have experienced homelessness step up to the window and order papers.
20 papers.
And they keep the profits of the sales.
Thank you again, brother.
In the pages of the paper, you'll even find the occasional opinion piece by Paul.
Once in a while.
But today, Paul has a new take he's sharing.
Once in a while.
One that you won't find in the pages, one he hasn't written. He's going to tell it to you right here, right now.
Common sense should tell people, get the shot, so get in there. Get it. Get it over with.
Paul's concerned about people who experience homelessness and their hesitation to take the COVID vaccine.
They think that the vaccine come out too soon. They're scared they're going to wind up in the hospital from the vaccination, which is not true. Which is not true.
Because of their living conditions, either in a shelter, in a congregate setting, they are more likely to contract the virus.
Bobby Watts is the CEO for the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council and also a member of President Biden's Health Equity Task Force.
People experiencing homelessness are dying at higher rates than the general population from COVID. Studies around the country show about 30 to 40% higher rate.
Watts says there is some good news for Paul's home city of Nashville. Here, it's estimated that of the population of people living homeless, about 60% have been vaccinated. That's higher than the vaccination rate of the general population of the city. But what about numbers for cities across the rest of the country? Watts says those very important, very useful numbers for vaccinations among those experiencing homelessness aren't there. They aren't recorded in many places.
Missing data is a form of oppression because you can't identify a problem, then you can't solve a problem.
And Watts says with the arrival of the Delta variant, there's an urgency to get work done within a community that sometimes does not trust the health system and gets a lot of misinformation. Watt says vaccines have to go directly to where people are, at camps and at shelters, and use trusted messengers. In Paul's case,
I'll trade you badges.
Someone with the contributor went with him to get vaccinated.
And I said, yeah, I'm definitely going to get it. I'm definitely going to get vaccinated before something happens to me.
Paul speaking today in the hope someone will hear the words of a friend with shared life experience who keeps people up to date and informed.
Everybody should get the shot. Everybody.
That's the newspaper man perspective by Paul Arndt. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm Forrest Sanders.
Forrest, thank you. And another blow to that newly approved and controversial Alzheimer's drug. 2 major medical centers say they will not give patients Aduhelm. The Cleveland Clinic did its own review on the drug and said based on safety and efficacy, it's not going to carry it. Doctors could still prescribe it, though. Patients would have to go somewhere else to get the IV drug. Mount Sinai Health System's decision not to carry it seems to be based more on how the FDA came to approve it, which is being investigated. Finally, in our lineup today, the work week is changing for some as more companies are bringing people back into the office. By Thursday may become the new Monday.
And here's what it looked like about an hour ago here across the Brazos Valley as we had a big downpour come right through Bryan College Station with some very heavy rain in a short amount of time. A little bit of street flooding out there, but it is fast moving and continuing to push away from the area. And you can see that little line continuing to work its way off toward the north, and that trend will continue. It's not as widespread as what we saw yesterday, but we're the bullseye here across Bryan College Station for today as that sea breeze front lifting a little farther to the north. And this is probably what's going to happen over the next couple of afternoons as well, as we'll see isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms out there. And looks like the bulk of it will be to our east. But if you get under one of these, as you just saw, we could see some pretty decent rainfall totals. But that will be ending later on tonight with the loss of daytime heating. By 7 o'clock Friday morning, partly to mostly cloudy skies across the area. During the afternoon, maybe another isolated to widely scattered storm. Your rain chances about 20 to 30% as we head into Friday, going into Saturday as well, and not anticipating again widespread heavy rain, but in very localized areas you could get a nice downpour or two here or there. But again, your chances of that are 20 to 30% each afternoon. So tonight, temperatures will be dipping down into the 70s and high temperatures will make it up into the low to mid 90s, but it'll feel like the upper 90s to near 100 when you factor in the humidity. So it is definitely going to be very warm out there. In fact, quite hot as we head into the weekend. Some pool weather on the way. And again, one of those splash and dash isolated storms possible here and there. 20 to 30% chance of rain. Then as we make our way into Monday, late in the day, I think thunderstorm chances will start to increase, and that will continue Tuesday and Wednesday, and high temperatures may come down into the 80s.
As more workers return to the office, we could see a shift in the traditional work week. And that's because people who are on hybrid schedules are mostly choosing Thursday as the day they all want to meet up at work in person. Hybrid scheduling allows people to work from home, then go into the office on some days. And some companies are seeing that meeting up in the office towards the end of the week is convenient for many workers.
Usually we see, on Thursday, people are wrapping up their projects. They want to get together to discuss things, and it really sets them off on a good tone for the weekend.
Some other companies are having workers come in on Mondays to set the tone for the week, but Monday may not work for everyone as some people are just getting started on their projects. Now, the good thing is companies are treating this back to work phase as really something experimental, and they're willing to make changes. Experts at LinkedIn say it is still too early to know if the traditional work week will completely change, but it does appear that companies still value that face-to-face time.
They just wanted some employees to be in the office from time to time because there is value to having someone be able to pull someone else aside and say, let's work on this project together. Let's figure this out together in a room. Or maybe they just run into each other in an elevator and they could just talk about maybe a project they're working on, and that person can end up helping them.
About 40% of employees will still be working remotely in September, according to a survey by the Partnership for New York City. Many companies plan on reviewing how hybrid schedules have worked early next year. Genetic genealogy has been growing in popularity as a way to solve cold cases. It uses databases kind of like 23andMe and Ancestry.com, but now more states are looking to stop police from using these databases. Tomorrow, we're taking a look into the implications for both the public and law enforcement.